Hello and welcome to Drama Recaps. Today we will delve into the 2022 romantic horror film named Bones and All. Spoilers ahead. The film starts with a tight shot of artworks displayed in a school corridor. When the bell tolls, students make their way home. At the school's auditorium, Mary is engrossed in her piano practice until a friend approaches her. This friend, working on the yearbook, informs Mary that she's missing from it because she skipped her photo sessions 3 times. The friend then shares about a sleepover she's hosting and invites Mary. Hesitant because of her strict father, Mary is advised to leave her house secretly after he sleeps. After school, her dad picks her up and encourages her to practice driving, especially parking. That evening, after cleaning up, Mary discreetly takes the window keys and says goodnight to her dad. Unbeknownst to her, he locks her door from the outside. Waiting for silence, Mary unlocks her window and heads to the sleepover. There, amidst fun and games, when asked about her past, Mary shares she's from the Eastern Shore but has no memories or photos of her mother. As the night progresses, one of the girls offers her hand to Mary for a nail paint session. In a shocking twist, Mary bites off the girl's ring finger. Panic ensues, with Mary fleeing the scene amidst screams. She rushes home, covered in blood, and her alarmed father quickly understands the gravity of the situation. They hurriedly pack, indicating this wasn't their first quick exit. The next morning, Mary wakes up in an unfamiliar place, her father nowhere in sight. Peeking outside, she notices their car is gone. On a nearby table, there's an envelope containing cash, a tape, and her birth certificate. Playing the tape, she hears her father's voice explaining his departure, stating he can't always protect her. Heartbroken, Mary decides to seek her mother, using the name on the certificate. She approaches a receptionist, asking directions to a place on a map. The receptionist tells her how to get to Detroit Lake but raises concerns about Mary's age. Asserting her right as an 18-year-old, Mary shows her birth certificate to confirm her age. Paying for her bus ticket, Mary embarks on her journey, listening to her father's voice from the tape. He mentions an incident from her childhood involving a babysitter. One evening, when he returned home, he was met with a chilling sight. Penny lay on the bathroom tiles, her face bitten severely, but her neck bore the brunt of it. It appeared as if Marin had been cradled by Penny when the attack began. He initially feared for Marin too, but she was merely asleep, her lips stained with blood. He discovered something soft in her mouth, resembling chewed gum, but it had a small hole for an earring. Thankfully, the nanny didn't wear any jewelry, or Marin might have choked. He quickly cleaned up, disposing of the body, and changed their identity. Marin later finds herself on a journey, and as dusk falls, she's at a bus stop, trying to read as rain begins. While seeking shelter, she spots a man watching her. She tries to avoid him, but he approaches, hinting that they're similar. Slightly alarmed, Marin tries to distance herself, but he intriguingly asks about the last time she fed. Her silence speaks volumes. The stranger, Sullivan, or Sully, leads her with an underlying promise of understanding and safety. Inside a house, as Sully prepares a raw chicken, Marin voices her isolation, thinking she was unique. Sully reveals that there are others, but they can be a danger to both regular people and to each other. The house isn't Sully's, and he encourages her to use her heightened senses. She detects an unusual smell, leading them to an old woman, barely alive. While Marin wants to help, Sully suggests it's an opportunity. As they discuss their nature, Marin becomes overwhelmed, grappling with the bleak outlook of her future. Sully tries to console her, emphasizing that he doesn't harm people unless necessary. Distressed, Marin asks for some alone time. As the sun rises, Marin wakes up from her sleep, the silence disturbed by the elderly lady's final breaths. Following the noise, she finds Sully indulging in the old woman. Marin, driven by hunger, joins him. After their feast, Sully unveils a braid from a pouch, woven from the hair of those he'd consumed over time. It's his way of cherishing their memories. Marin curiously asks about his first experience, and Sully recounts consuming his granddad while awaiting the undertaker. He fled home afterwards, and no one looked for him. Marin shares she's on a quest to find someone, implying her mother. After a mutual moment of vulnerability, she freshens up. Overhearing Sully's singing in the next room, Marin seizes the chance to slip away, boarding a departing bus. She spots a disapproving Sully through the window. Distraught, Marin listens to a tape. Her father recalls a boy disappearing during a camp she attended at 8. Though he began to see Marin's true nature, he didn't resent her. He chose to believe she had reasons for her actions. Now in Indiana, she visits a store, subtly stealing items. She briefly locks eyes with a boy. As another shopper mistreats a woman and her child, Marin intervenes, supported by the same boy. The boy handles the situation, allowing Marin to take more goods unnoticed. On exiting, she senses a familiar scent, leading her to the boy, now bloodied, hinting where she can find the rude man. Instead, Marin tails him. Their mutual senses reveal they are both eaters. She mentions her destination, Minnesota, and they spontaneously decide to travel together. Borrowing the aggressive customer's truck, the boy introduces himself as Lee. They find the man's address and, at his place, Lee dances to a favored record before washing off the blood. Marin has a dream about her dad wishing her on her birthday before waking up. Come morning, the duo grabs breakfast. Marin confides about her unsettling encounter with Sully. After a long day's drive, instead of Lee's place in Kentucky, they head to his late aunt's house nearby. When dawn breaks, Lee tells Marin he's off to visit his sister, Kayla. He leaves her to explore the house but reminds her to secure the door. As they're eating, Kayla's knocking disrupts them. Angry, she confronts Lee for being always away, just like their dad who one day left for good. Fearing Lee might do the same, Kayla is concerned. Lee tries to reassure her, saying he'll be back in 2 weeks. Once she's gone, Lee and Marin plan an exit that night, thinking Kayla might inform their mom. The two of them plot to grab some cash from a cafe till. After executing their plan, they find a secluded place with animals and start discussing their unique lives. Marin shares her quest to locate her mother, Janelle, in Minnesota, her birthplace. She confesses she has no other memory of Janelle. As they chat, a bond grows, leading to a shared close moment. Raindrops hit the truck the next morning with Marin driving. Lee, hopelessly in love, caresses her hair while humming a tune from the radio. They pull over near a campsite, and as they share stories, another vehicle pulls up. Lee, cautious, steps out to greet two guys, Brad and Jake. The duo seems to know them from a previous sighting by a lake. Lee, introducing themselves as Leon and Maggie, is tense. Brad and Jake ease the mood, offering beers. They gather around a campfire, where Jake discloses Brad's unusual taste. Even though he isn't a born eater, he enjoys it. The topic of consuming an entire person, bones and all, surfaces. Marin finds the idea repulsive and leaves when Brad admits his past meals. Later, as Brad and Jake slumber, Marin and Lee sneakily start their car. Jake stirs and chases them, but a quick acceleration sees them escape. The next day, after a long drive, they end up in Iowa. They decide to unwind at an amusement park. Atop a Ferris wheel, Marin hints at her hunger. Scanning the surroundings, Lee identifies a potential meal, a booth operator denying a kid his rightful prize. After a successful shot at a game and some light banter, Lee agrees to meet the booth worker post his shift. To kill time, Marin plays the recording of her father, wishing for a normal life for his daughter. She imagines his concluding words, "I hope you find peace." Lee, still evasive about discussing his family, sees the booth operator approaching. He heads out, signaling Marin to stay put in their vehicle. Marin observes Lee as he approaches the booth guy. Lee lures him to a hidden spot. After waiting for a while, Marin goes to check. She witnesses Lee taking down the man, and they both feed. After the act, they acquire the booth guy's car, while Lee keeps their truck. Checking the guy's ID, they drive to the provided address but notice the house is lit. Because Lee is still stained with evidence, Marin goes to inspect. She hides and spots a lady with an infant, leading to the chilling realization that the man had a family. She rushes back, showing Lee photos from the man's car of him with his family. They quickly abandon the car near the house and flee in the truck. Maren, deeply affected by the events, questions their actions. Lee tries to console her, emphasizing their lack of choice. After a silent journey, Maren is jolted awake from a nap, recalling a dream of her father. Once in Minnesota, using a phone book, she finds an address for her grandma, Barbara. They head there, and upon meeting Barbara, Maren learns about her mother, Janelle, and father, Leonard. Barbara shares that she and her husband adopted Janelle, and Maren senses she's holding back more. Eventually, Barbara reveals Janelle checked herself into Fergus Falls State Hospital. Maren rushes to the hospital, leaving Lee behind. Inside, a friendly nurse guides her to Janelle. Seeing her mother, a shocking sight greets Maren. Janelle has no hands. The nurse hands over a letter Janelle penned 15 years ago, addressed to Maren. The letter discloses Janelle's true nature and her love for Maren. As Maren processes the letter, Janelle lunges at her, attempting to consume her. The nurse intervenes, escorting Maren out through a back door. Outside, Maren recounts the ordeal to Lee, expressing anger at her mother. They argue as Lee attempts to make her grasp the reality of their condition. Vowing not to follow in her mother's footsteps, Maren takes the driver's seat. She fights back tears, contemplating her next move. Pulling up to a fuel station, she tells arresting Lee she'll fill up the truck. Maren sets the money they took from the cafe on the dashboard, gives Lee a final look, and walks away. Lee, waking up later, notices her absence and searches the town for her. As Maren walks on the highway, a truck stops beside her. To her surprise, it's Sully, an old acquaintance. Sully admits he's been tracking her since their last meeting and wants her back. Maren declines, angering him, and he leaves her with a stream of harsh words. Seeking solace, Maren enters a diner and reflects on an old tape her father left behind. Choosing to end its significance, she pulls out the tape, destroying it. Meanwhile, Lee dreams of a violent act and wakes up in a panic. He decides it's time to return home and informs his sister, Kayla, about his plan. A few months later, Maren, drawn to the past, visits Lee's hometown. She encounters Kayla, who fills her in on their family's dark history, including an incident where Lee allegedly attacked their abusive father. Although Lee was taken into police custody, he was later released, with the evidence being inconclusive. Maren reunites with Lee by a lake. As they swim, they reflect on their pasts. Lee confides in Maren about the real incident with his father, admitting he had taken revenge for years of abuse. Comforted by Maren, the two dream of starting fresh. They settle down, with Maren working at a library, aiming for a peaceful life. This peace is shattered when Maren comes home one day to find signs of an intruder, Sully. As he attacks her, Lee intervenes, leading to a fierce struggle. In the aftermath, they find that Lee has been mortally wounded. In a heartbreaking twist, Lee asks Maren to end his pain, and she fulfills his last wish.